your seats. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 69 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Before I begin, on behalf of all the MOM members, I want to wish Mr. Maguire a very happy birthday. We have the cake. So as soon as we can finish this bill, we will have the cake. That's it. Today, pursuant to the order of the order of.
There's a point of order.
Yes, Mr.
Point
Maguire.
of order. Yeah, we can have our cake and eat it too. That'll be later. And I understand your birthday's tomorrow.
It was last Friday.
Last Friday.
May
Okay.
26th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
36 and 29. Thank you.
Today, pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, November 16, 2022, the committee will resume consideration of Bill S-245, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, granting citizenship to certain Canadians. We are continuing our clause-by-clause study of the bill. When we left off, we were debating on new NDP 12. Mr. Kimmich had the floor right before we adjourned, so I will let him continue. Mr. Kimmich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's so kind of you. We were at NDP 12. I just want to make a point about this meeting that was called. Typically, we are given 48 hours notice to do so, and I'll note that we had sent a letter and calling for an emergency meeting to consider the case of the international students, and that did not happen, and there are international students facing deportation this week. So I just find it terribly unfortunate that we couldn't have had that meeting and do, two on S-245 this week, and this one we could have dedicated to these international students. I was a bit tardy getting here just because I was doing interviews, and it's such a huge case right now because the deportation inadmissibility hearings had now been done. So with that, there was one question that I had marked myself to ask the department officials here, and it's one I've asked previously when there's been a switch of amendments. One is a floor amendment, one was the one provided with the package. What is the difference between the two? I can't remember whether I got this information between original NDP 12 and this version of NDP 12, just so I can have an understanding of which one I would have preferred to be voting on. Thank you.
Chair, thank you for the question. My understanding is that the previous version was providing a safety valve to enable persons becoming automatic citizens through the amendments to the bills who did not wish to be citizens to be able to opt out back to the time of the coming into force of the bill. And the significance of that is that if they have another citizenship or reside in another jurisdiction where dual citizenship is problematic, it can leave a gap in time, whereas this current version for the committee's consideration makes it clear that persons availing themselves of this opt-out provision would be deemed never to have become Canadian citizens under the provision of the bill, leaving no room for interpretation by another jurisdiction in order to really eliminate or mitigate to the maximum any unintended consequences. Thank you.
So I was going to raise then this point about other jurisdictions. In my experience, in the few consular kind of issues I've dealt with in the past, I found that other jurisdictions just completely ignore our laws and they make a claim on someone as soon as they are originally from that country. They just make a claim on them, and we've seen this in cases of dissidents in China, for example. I think one of the cases, Hussein Chalil, who's been held now for, I think, over a decade in a prison in China, even though he is a dual citizen, they ignore the fact that he's a citizen of our country, and they've just proceeded to jail him unfairly, deny him consular services as well. So, I mean, in the opinion of the party, why do you think then this change between the original NDP 12, this future NDP 12, isn't it the case then that only other Western countries or Westernized countries that naturalize a lot of citizens will then, see this and abide by it and be like, okay, that works for us. Whereas more authoritarian countries, because typically these are more authoritarian countries, will simply ignore this case and simply make a claim on our citizens, our people, regardless of the laws that we have in place.
Madam Chair, the retroactive element of this revised amendment is more useful for the circumstances where different countries may have laws on the books where provisions may be automatic. For instance, if another citizenship is taken out, it can cause loss or have a negative impact on another citizenship that someone has, as an example, or have an impact that may be negative for the person in terms of a legal, professional, or other reasons. It's not so much to do with the sort of the type of government in place in another country, but more in terms of the nature of the citizenship laws in place and the impact on the individual in that jurisdiction. Thank you.
I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Dhaliwal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just quickly wanted to mention on the students issue. I just want to tell the committee members, the Liberal caucus is also on this thing, and we just had a meeting, and an hour meeting from 7 o'clock PST or 10 to 11, and I can tell you that the department as well as the ministry is also working hard on this issue. This issue is hitting everyone home. So I just wanted to update the committee members, and also I think it will be a wise idea for Conservative members and NDP members to have briefing from the department as well. And instead of making this a political issue, let's make this a humanitarian issue and deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Dhaliwal. Saying no further debate, we will go for a vote on new NDP 12. Thank you.
Mr. Ali. Mr. Dhaliwal.
Mr. Dhaliwal, you are on mute.
Favor?
Yes.
Mr. Erkouri. Mr. Long.
Yes.
Madame Lalonde.
Oui.
Mr. Kimmich. Mr. McGuire.
Against.
Mr. Waugh.
Against.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Against.
Madame Larouche. Ms. Kwan.
For.
Yeas 7, nays 4.
12 is carried. Now we will come to the new clause 1.2, G7. Ms. Lalonde, would you like to move G7?
Yes, oui, Madame.
Yes, I would indeed, Madam Chairperson.
And I won't use time that is very precious during our session today. You all have a copy. I will, though, explain a little bit that this amendment is another instance where we're adding the wording of G1 into the Act, representing the former Section 8 people. Again, this is being done to ensure that they're been given equal treatments in the Act as all other citizens that were born abroad but inherited its citizenship from their parents. In this amendment, Madam Chair, the former Sections 8s are being added to the list of those who do not have access to what's referred to as the direct grants of citizenship for adoptees because they're born abroad in the first generation. And again, this is to ensure consistent treatment. However, due to the NDP 8, the former Section 8s being restored by the bill would be able to use the direct adoption grant as long as they meet the substantial connection of physical presence in Canada for 1,095 days. For clarity, if we don't pass this amendment, it will mean that when a former Section 8 persons who has spent 3+ years in Canada wants to adopt a child from abroad, they would have to do an immigration sponsorship process, Madam Chair, to sponsor that child to get the PR, and then eventually apply for citizenship. So without this amendment, they would be barred from using the simple facilitative grant for adoptees. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. Seeing no debate, Mr. Kimmich?
Ms. Lalonde said. Can I get, does the department agree with that interpretation of this amendment?
Madam Chair, a simple summary of the intended impact of this sort of more technical amendment is to ensure the consistent application of the first generation limit, and it is impacting the descendants of the Section 8 persons who are restored their citizenship by the bill, and so that is a concise summary. Thank you.
And does this amendment, I've asked this before, but does this amendment treat adoptions completed in Canada the same as adoptions completed internationally? So, I mean, by that I mean 2 Canadians overseas adopting a child in another legal jurisdiction. They are treated the same way in both, like in that previous adoption amendment that we supported? Or is this something different?
Ms. Girard?
Madam Chair, this amendment, as I mentioned, is ensuring the consistent implementation of the first generation limit for the descendants of the Section 8 restorees, and that would include international adoptees. Though, as we discussed in committee yesterday, the Section 8 restorees would also have available to them the connection test, whether their child was born abroad or was adopted abroad in the second generation or beyond. Thank you.
Mr. Kimmich?
Can you just explain that last part in the second generation and beyond?
Madam Chair, so the impact of the first generation limit is that only the first generation born or adopted abroad have direct access to citizenship, if I can put it that way in summary terms. And the benefit of the connection test amendments that have been voted by this committee to date are that a Canadian parent who is already first generation born abroad and so is not able to automatically transmit their citizenship to a child born or adopted abroad under current legislative provisions, under the amended provisions of this bill would be able to do so in future, whether their child is born abroad in the second generation or beyond, or adopted abroad in the second generation or beyond, because the parent is already considered first generation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kimmich?
I just wanted to say that once I'm satisfied with the answer, so thank you for that. This is an amendment that we can vote for, but once we get to new clause 1.4, the CPC has a floor amendment that we will be doing. So I'm just giving you notice of that.
For 1.4 or after
It's
1.4?
At 1.4. If you give me a few seconds after we do the recorded division on this amendment, I can provide you exactly which one. Okay. Thank you,
Okay. Seeing no further debate, we will go for a vote on G7. So we will be voting on G7. Mr. Clerk, if you can please take the vote.
Mr. Ali?
Yes.
Mr. Dhaliwal?
Yes.
Mr. El Khoury?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Madame Lalonde?
Oui.
Mr. Kimmich?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Waugh? Yes. Ms. Rempel-Garner?
Yes.
Madame Larouche? Ms. Kwan?
Yes.
Yeas 11, nays 0.
Thank you. G7 is carried. So now we will proceed to new clause 1.3, G8. Ms. Lalonde, would you like to move G8?
No.
Okay. So just to clarify, like Mr. Kimmich, is it before 1.4 or after 1.4?
It is new clause. It will be in 1.3 after line 18 on page 1.
Okay, so yes, you can move it.
I was going to say that Ms. Rumpel-Garner has
Yes, Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Thank you. I move that Bill S245 be amended by adding after line 18 on page 1 the following new clause. 1.4, the Act is amended by adding the following after Section 23. Members of the Senate shall not be eligible to be delegated authority unless they are appointed, an appointed member of the King's Privy Council. I can't believe that we're here, but I think that any time this committee now has an opportunity to clarify that members of Parliament and other parliamentarians, particularly the Senate, do not have delegated authority to make decisions that affect either citizenship or other immigration applications, we should avail ourselves of doing that. There are pending court cases now, given that a member of the Senate took it upon themselves to assume that they had delegated authority to make these types of decisions. Given what's happened before and what our committee has been seized with this year, I think it's important to articulate in acts that there has to be a clear delineated line of authority to make immigration decisions, be it, as in this case, the Citizenship Act or otherwise.
And if I can interrupt, because members don't have that. So I will suspend the meeting for a few minutes so that this amendment can be circulated to all the members in both official languages, and then we will reconvene. So the meeting is suspended. So, huh? You email? Yes. Do you have copies? Do you have copies? Yeah, yeah, if they can give it to Ms. Lalonde. Give it to them too. To order. Hope everyone has received that. So we have CPC 3 on the floor. Ms. Rempel Garner was speaking as. Okay, Mr. Kimmich.
Just, Madam Chair, on this particular amendment, I think when it was originally written, I suspect this was the case around when we were doing the Afghanistan study and then the follow-up studies as well, because it stems from that idea that there's a member of the Senate, and there's been many news articles written about it. So I just want to offer a sub-amendment just to fix it up, as erasing the word members of the Senate to say any parliamentarian shall not be eligible to be delegated authority unless they are an appointed member of the King's Privy Council. So that would be a sub-amendment, just deleting members of the Senate and substituting any parliamentarian. And the purpose of this is that so no...
The sub-amendment which you are saying?
So it would just be deleting members of the Senate and substituting any parliamentarian. Membres du Sénat avec...
Members of the Senate in respect of any parliamentarian.
By Mr. Kimmich, replacing the words members of the Senate with any parliamentarians.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a question for the officials. I wonder if the officials can clarify for committee at present. Can anybody have this authority? Because as it stands right now, it is my understanding that nobody actually can have delegated authority unless if the minister explicitly indicates so. And so in the situation with the Afghanistan situation with the senator, it is our understanding that there's been no delegated authority given. So can we just get some clarification on delegated authority and whether or not, whether it's the parliamentarian Senate or just some guy on the street, if they can have this authority?
Ms. Girard?
Thank you for the question. Madam Chair, as it stands under Section 23 of the Citizenship Act, a delegation of authority must be done by the minister in writing. And so those are the key operative words. The delegation must be done in writing. I would further note that in general, those delegations are done in writing to various members in the department selected by the minister under formal written delegation instruments. Thank you.
I'll ask one further question, and I wonder if in the past, has there been situations where a minister had delegated that authority to other parliamentarians?
Ms. Girard.
Madam Chair, I cannot say with certainty, but I'm not aware over the course of my 30-plus years work in government of any circumstance where a minister of the department has made such a delegation in writing to someone other than a member of the department. Thank you.
Ms. Kwan?
Thank you very much. That's most helpful.
Thank you. Ms. Rempel Garner?
Thank you. I agree that this should be a no-brainer for all of us. I don't think that there's anyone here who would think that we have the authority to do this. However, we have just spent, I would say, like a fairly nonpartisan conversation, several committee meetings examining and unraveling a situation where a parliamentarian believes that she had delegated authority to undertake action. There are now multiple court cases alleging that she did have, that are going to be hinged on what the premise that she had delegated authority. Those might succeed. I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set because I think it undermines the integrity of Canada's immigration system being arm's length and non-political. And I think that we should be availing ourselves of the opportunity whenever we have it to specify that parliamentarians, and I agree with I will be supporting the amendment, parliamentarians do not have the authority to make these decisions. I again, we are now in a situation where a sitting parliamentarian is alleging that she did have authority to make decisions. There's correspondence that her consultant had where she was corresponding with people who I believe are now litigants in a case, stating that this letter will get you into Canada. I think we need to be very clear I would like to take action after hearing all of this testimony over the last several months, and frankly, after being given the runaround for 2 years on one of my constituents' cases, that we are actually clarifying in legislation that parliamentarians do not have the ability to make these undertakings. There are many times in law or as we are legislating, where we will add extra clarity as legislators in law to specify something in order to either give added protection or send a message to the public. I'm thinking about, this is over a decade now, when the first debate on enshrining gender identity into the various legislative documents in Canada came up when this was first being debated. Arguments were being made, well, this is already protected under certain categories or whatnot. And Parliament decided, rightly so, to say this is worthy of giving protection in a certain area, to underline that. So what we're doing here is we are clarifying and giving extra clarity, there's many precedents of this before in the House of Commons. We are giving extra clarity that this is something that parliamentarians should not do. There are also many times when parliamentarians, where we either amend the standing orders in the House of Commons or add additional clarity so that I think about particularly when parliamentarians have broken the rules in the past, even though they shouldn't have done that, we add extra regulations in the standing orders or whatnot to clarify that, no, this is something you should not do. It's like a code of conduct. And the reality is we have seen multiple instances of this happen with this certain parliamentarian over the last year. And now that we have the opportunity to amend the Citizenship Act, I just want to clarify that parliamentarians do not have the right to do this unless it is carried forward in the manner that is set forth in this amendment. And I do support the sub-amendment because it does cover all parliamentarians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Mr. Kimmich, and then Ms. Kwan. Mr. Kimmich.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I'd just like to add that the purpose of this sub-amendment, and I assume that no parliamentarian could do what the senator did, and that the committee heard this as testimony, referring here only to the delegate and that this delegated authority and as appointed member of the King of Privy Council, and they would fill forms and the visas. We've all received examples of those visas in emails that were sent to us after the testimony of the Senator, Ms. McPhedran. So this is a clause to clarify, to provide greater certainty. And I know that in the past, in certain bills, there have been such clauses to ensure greater clarity, and so that parliamentarians and the general public are all protected. Everyone must know that they do not have this right to issue a visa in this manner at any point. And as my colleague mentioned, we heard testimony where a senator actually believed that she had the delegated authority by the minister, the chief of staff and other individuals from the government to do this work. She was not a member of the King's Privy Council. So this is just for greater certainty and such that we can say going forward that no parliamentarian was unaware that they did not have this right, this delegated authority, without being appointed to the King's Privy Council. Thank you.
On.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think what the officials provided to us is important to note. I think the Act is actually very clear to say that you will not have delegated authority unless if you have been given written authority by the minister. I mean, I don't know. I'm not that smart, but I would never think that I have the authority to do things that only the minister can do under any circumstances. Like I just wouldn't even cross my mind that I would have that kind of authority. So, and from what we understand, authority in the way in which is suggested might be understood to have been given to a parliamentarian apparently has never happened. That written authority from the minister has never been given to parliamentarians as far as the officials could recollect over in her last 30 years or so with the department. So this situation is a matter that is being dealt with in the court, and by the way, is also a situation to which this committee is studying, to which we have not completed. So, so from my perspective, I think the language is very clear in the Act, and people should abide by what is in the Act.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Mr. Maguire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would agree with Ms. Kwan in regards to any of us as parliamentarians thinking that this would be possible for us to do, because it isn't. And she's quite right on that. But I agree with the change that my colleague has brought in as far as adding any parliamentarian as opposed to members of the Senate, because who would have thought that any member of the Senate would have ever tried this before? As far as I know, it hasn't been done. It's a situation as a Manitoba member of Parliament. I'm speaking about Ms. McFedrin, who is a senator from Manitoba, in the situation that she took part in, at least anyway. And I think that this clarifies the situation for, because it was never done by, I believe, unless there's a precedent that I'm not aware of, a member of the Senate doing this before, that could have been done by a parliamentarian, perhaps the same way. And so I would indicate that I would support this amendment, as well as the sub-amendment that my colleague, Mr. Kamick, has brought forward to Ms. Rempel-Garner's amendment. So I think it's just a matter of clarification, and we should just move on with this unanimously as far as I can see. I don't think there's any harm in putting the any parliamentarian part in there, and it certainly does clarify it for any future exchange of this type that might take place.
Thank you. Seeing no further debate, we will go for a vote on the sub-amendment. So we will be, just to clarify to all the members, we are voting on the sub-amendment brought by Mr. Kamic. Mr. Clerk, if you can please take the vote on the sub-amendment.
Mr. Ali.
No.
Mr. Dhaliwal. Sorry, Mr. Dhaliwal?
Can you...
Okay. Mr. El Khoury.
No.
Mr. Long.
No.
Madame Lalonde.
No.
Mr. Kamic.
Yes.
Mr. Maguire.
Yes.
Mr. Waugh.
Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Yes.
Madame Larouche.
No.
Ms. Kwan.
No.
Yeas 4, nays 7.
So the sub-amendment is defeated. So we are back on CPC 3. Seeing no further debate on CPC 3, we will go for a vote on CPC 3. So, Mr. Clerk, if you can please take the vote on CPC 3.
Mr. Ali.
Against?
Mr. Dhaliwal.
Mr. Dhaliwal, you are on mute.
Against?
Yes.
Mr. El Khoury. Mr. Long.
No.
Madame Lalonde.
No.
Mr. Kamic.
Yes.
Mr. Maguire.
Yes.
Mr. Waugh.
Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Yes.
Madame Larouche.
No.
Ms. Kwan. Yeas 4, nays 7.
So CPC 3 is defeated. Now we come to new clause 1.4, G9. Ms. Lalonde, would you like to move G9?
Madam Chair, we gave notice that we have CPC Amendment 4 from the floor.
Is it before 1.4?
Yes.
Okay, CPC 4.
Oh, it is at 1.4.
CPC 4. Okay, so who will move it?
Thank you, Chair. I move that Bill S245 be amended by adding after line 18 on page 1 the following new clause.
Sir Rampelga. Yes, please go ahead.
I move that Bill S245 be amended by adding after line 18 on page 1 the following new clause. 1.40, Section 24 of the Act is amended by adding at an in-person citizenship ceremony after oath of citizenship.
This will be circulated to all the members. I can suspend for 2 minutes so that all the members can get that, and then we will come back to it. So the meeting is suspended. We have CPC 4. Hope everyone has got it. CPC 4. Ms. LaRoche? Yes, we will come to you, Ms. LaRoche, after Ms. Rempel-Garner. She had the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So this, of course, this amendment follows news that the government had decided to make room for online oaths of citizenship as opposed to trying to accommodate everybody by in-person citizenship ceremonies. The rationale for this, I think, is actually, this amendment is actually best described by my former colleague and former Calgary Mayor Nahid Nenshi, who I think is in Ottawa today. I saw him meeting with former Mayor Jim Watson, so if he's here, hello. So he tweeted on February 28th after this, this news emerged, and he tweeted the following. This, and by this he means removing the in-person citizenship ceremony, is without question a terrible idea. The ceremony is deeply meaningful, and the reasons for removing it given here are bureaucratic and puerile and don't solve the actual problem. And then he tweets at the Minister of Immigration, please put an end to this now. So I've done many in-person citizenship ceremonies. They're very beautiful events. And I think that at a time when our country is becoming more divided in different areas, preserving traditions and ceremonies that unite us in common purpose and common values are exceptionally important. We are a pluralism, and we need to be looking for more ways to bring people together to celebrate that, not less. I just really firmly believe that. And saying that we can't, that it's too hard to make in-person ceremonies happen, I can't buy into that. Now, I want to say Mayor Nenshi and I, we've locked horns on numerous occasions. I do have respect for him. And times when I've seen, when I can say I have had great respect for him, was when he was participating in administering or being part of in-person citizenship ceremonies, because these are moments where we come together across party lines, across political stripe, across regions, countries, and to say we are all here and glad to be citizens of our country. It's a unifying moment. So for the department to give, excuses like, oh, we're trying to make it more flexible, really what they're saying is we're trying to make it easier on ourselves. And that's not right. It's just not. This is something that's worth fighting for. I think all of us need to look deep within our hearts and start finding reasons to fight for the things that unite us as a country. And this is one of them. This is one of them. So I don't accept that citizenship ceremonies should be checking a box on a web form in a lonely room. I just don't accept that. I think that's just the antithesis of what it means to be a Canadian. But I had the great fortune of being born into my Canadian citizenship. And so I want to read very briefly the perception of this government change by Mansour Lada. He wrote an article in an opinion piece in the Toronto Star on April 10th, 2023. And the title of this article, as argument and a deep, just to implore my colleagues to support this amendment, the title of the article is, I'm horrified by the suggestion of canceling in-person citizenship ceremonies. And I want to reemphasize, this is the Toronto Star. This isn't a right-wing conservative rag. This is the Toronto Star. And the subheading is, I'm horrified Canada is proposing to abolish the welcoming in-person citizenship ceremonies and replace it with an administrative online box. Citizenship ceremonies are emotional and personal experiences, especially for those of us who have had the privilege of participating in one. The Department of Citizenship and Immigration is contemplating an end for the in-person citizenship ceremonies in favor of a, quote, secure online solution. I still remember the citizenship ceremony I had to attend when I proudly became a Canadian citizen in 1975. I was with my wife and my son, all dressed up in our finest, lined up with new Canadians of all backgrounds, happily showing off Canadian flags. When the time came to sing the newly memorized national anthem, I was so emotional that my eyes welled up with tears. Every Canada Day, I still have visions of my heartbreaking citizenship ceremony. I am horrified the government is proposing to abolish the special welcoming in-person citizenship ceremony with an administrative online box and do away with group singing, "O Canada." The fact that Canada, the most friendly and welcoming nation in the world, would resort to a computer-oriented system to announce its citizens is appalling. Ceremonies in everyone's life, be it a birthday or a retirement party, play an important part, signifying milestones in their lives. A former Minister of Immigration under then Prime Minister Jean Chrétien was so upset that he wrote an op-ed for this newspaper, calling it an insult. So again, this is a former Liberal cabinet minister calling this decision an insult. For years, my parents would recount how momentous and meaningful the ceremony was. Why would government want to rob future citizens of this feeling of attachments? Another prominent defender, former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, also a former refugee and presided over a few citizenship ceremonies herself as an officer of the Order of Canada, said she was horrified by the proposed change. Tarek Haddad, a Syrian refugee famous for founding the Nova Scotia-based chocolatier Peace by Chocolate, described Canadian citizenship ceremonies as the magical rituals that bring everyone together, new and old citizens, to celebrate the true meaning of the Canadian dream. We cannot afford to lose the significance of this celebration of belonging, nor can we diminish the value of Canadian citizenship, he added. Credit should, however, be given to the government for moving a notch forward on reconciliation of Indigenous people by officially recognizing them. The new language of the oath reads, I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors, and I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including the Constitution, which recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. All Canadians and would-be citizens should protest the proposal to replace citizenship ceremonies and with something tantamount to dial a citizen method. Becoming a citizen by ticking the Make Me a Canadian box from anywhere is an impolite method of becoming a citizen of one's country. He's right. We should protest this. Each of us should protest this. Protest it with everything that we have. In my city of Calgary this year, and I think this was well-intentioned, but the city administration came out and said that they were canceling major components of our Canada Day celebration because they were culturally insensitive. I will be the first one to acknowledge that Canada has so much more to do, both to acknowledge and take real action, not symbolic action, to address reconciliation and the horrors that were imparted on First Nations and Indigenous persons by colonizers. These actions have had long-lasting generational impacts on our country and have been a stain on our country's social fabric. At the same time, I am the first person who will defend the fact that Canada is a miracle. It is a miracle that our country exists, that we can live together as a pluralism of different people with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, very different political backgrounds and thoughts, and somehow manage to coexist in peace without breaking out into civil war, have peaceable transitions of power in our government, and respect ourselves, particularly today on the start of Pride Month. These are all things that are remarkably important and miraculous about our country, and I refuse to go into a situation where we are forced as leaders or forcing our constituents into a binary where we have to choose between addressing wrongs of our past and celebrating the miracle that is our present. We have so few traditions, shared traditions in this country, that it is so important that we guard every one of them with every fabric of our being. And I want, as we're all sitting here, for everybody here to just pause for a moment and really think about this. I want everybody in this room to feel deeply uncomfortable as I'm saying these words. As parliamentarians, we have a responsibility to protect these traditions and protect these rites of passage and unity that bring our country together. I cannot accept bureaucrats within the Department of Immigration saying, oh, we're just trying to make it easier by clicking on this box, as a way of somehow justifying the removal of one of our very few shared and celebrated traditions in this country. We now have an opportunity in front of us as a committee to amend the Citizenship Act based on a motion that was put forward in this committee. This is not me speaking as a conservative. This is me speaking as a citizen of Canada and echoing the voices of prominent Liberals, prominent far-left people, prominent right people saying, look, across political stripes, we need to celebrate this country, and in moments where we come together to celebrate that miracle, we need to have more of those. We shouldn't have less. So I implore you, particularly ahead of Canada Day, to respect the voices of so many people, including former Liberal cabinet ministers, including Mayor Naheed Nenshi, including refugees, including former Governor General Adrian Clarkson, who have all said, do not allow this to happen. Protest it. I sit here and protest, and I ask all of my colleagues to do the same by voting in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaRoche.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I'm speaking to the officials here. Would there be really an issue with an online ceremony? And is there any value added to an in-person ceremony? I'd like to know your thoughts.
Right.
Oui, Madame la Présidente.
Yes, Madam Chairperson. Well, could the member just repeat the question? Thank you very much. I just heard a part of the question. Well, in this motion, it's about virtual citizenship ceremonies. So I'd like to know if there's a real problem with those virtual ceremonies and what the value added is for in-person ceremonies. So what are the issues?
Gerard.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much for the question. Well, this is an opportunity for me to clarify the following, that the regulatory proposal that was put forward, that the member was commenting on, in no way whatsoever suggested that these ceremonies be replaced or substituted. We must be very clear in this regard. The regulatory proposal was to offer a choice to applicants to take the oath, as required under the Act, at a ceremony, just as it is currently, or to avail themselves of the option to swear an oath by way of technology and to participate in a ceremony at a later date, with a view to saving up to 3 months delay in terms of processing. So at all times and in every respect, under this amendment, the individual could avail themselves of an in-person ceremony. Secondly, in response to the member's question, it is true that during the pandemic, the Minister did put in place virtual ceremonies. And I testified at another meeting of another parliamentary committee, of this committee, that this enabled the Minister to reach a record number of new citizenships over the course of that year. We conferred citizenship to thousands of new citizens over the last year. And this was made possible by virtue of the fact that we enjoyed certain flexibility and had the capacity and capability to offer virtual citizenship ceremonies. And those folks were delighted to become citizens despite the other constraints that we all faced vis-a-vis in-person ceremonies. And we're continuing to offer both in-person and virtual citizenship ceremonies with a view to reducing backlogs and processing times, and also to have more new Canadian citizens at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. I have a long list of the speakers. Mr. Kamich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm one of those Canadian citizens who was naturalized, and I did my ceremony back in 1989. I think I've said that before. I still have one of those old little citizenship cards. And I still think the cards are better than the big certificates. I'm sorry if the department doesn't like it. I know those cards are probably tougher or more expensive to make, but they were handy because I was using it for some videos that we were making on Parliament Hill a few weeks ago, and I actually have the card in my hand when I want to show it that they did used to exist. Used to have your picture on it, but I'm like 8 in that picture, way more hair, way more curly too. This amendment actually, comes from ideas and witness testimony that we heard here from the Institute for Canadian Citizenship and Daniel Bernhardt, who does incredible work to provide enhanced citizenship ceremonies, because he understands that this department has 3 names in it. It is the Department of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. And too often, especially on this committee, we forget we do citizenship. The point of immigration is citizenship. I know we talk about filling workforce needs and labor market needs, and especially, and I care about this very much, helping people escape terrible conditions in other countries. All very good things we do. I know my family and my father is very thankful that Canada allowed him to stay. My dad was a member of the Solidarity Movement, came to Canada. My grandfather was passing away of brain cancer in Toronto. He is buried in Toronto. My grandmother is buried in Toronto. This has been a great country for us. I have never heard my father complain that he had to do an in-person citizenship ceremony. I've actually never had someone come to me and complain that was, a huge inconvenience to have to do an in-person citizenship ceremony. In fact, I've heard the opposite. I've had people come to me and say, I had to do a virtual ceremony. I tried to make it as meaningful as possible. In the emails the department sends out, it pushes virtual ceremonies as the option. You have to click. That's what the department pushes. It's not obvious to anyone reading these emails that there is another option of an in-person ceremony. And then, I've sometimes heard the argument made, well, this is how we can clear a backlog of citizenship ceremonies. Well, why not just assign more staff and more people? The government of Canada has more properties than anybody else, I think, in Canada. There is double the staff that there used to be, according to PowerPoint decks I have from the department on the number of staff. The Treasury Board Secretary shows there's record amounts of staff in this department. We've doubled the funding of this department, and we can't do in-person citizenship ceremonies on a reasonable delay. You can invite people. Why is it that cinemas can figure out how to fill their cinemas? Why is it that churches can fill out how to fill themselves out? Why is it private sector organizations can figure it out, but the government of Canada can't? Like my colleague said, this is an opportunity for people from different backgrounds, different places, different mother tongues that they speak. French and English are not my mother tongue. I still think in Polish, and I try to translate in my head as fast as possible. It's a big deal. You get to meet people from other places of origin, and I really think it should be mandatory to do it in an in-person citizenship ceremony. That should be the default setting. Clearing the excuse that there is a backlog and therefore needs to be cleared by any means necessary is not good enough. And the department has been promoting, and it's in the budget as well, there's this, what's called click citizenship. That's what I'm calling it. Just an attestation that you took the oath of office. I've been to these ceremonies. They're very meaningful for people. People take pictures of them. They like participating. They linger afterwards. They have RCMP and local police forces attend in their dress uniforms. It is truly, truly a special event. Now, I was underage when I took my oath of citizenship, and I will admit to having been distracted because we were on a very high floor. And for those of us, for a certain vintage, I'll say Polish vintage, the tallest building in Poland, I think, was the Communist Party headquarters in Warsaw. And I'm not from the capital originally. I am from a place called Gdańsk. This is why this is so important. I was distracted because it was a special day. My mom took the oath of citizenship. It was a big deal. Canada naturalizes more citizens, I think, than any other place in the world. I think that too. I'm happy to be corrected. It is a special time. I think it's people take pictures, they frame these pictures, they frame their certificates. There's a reason many members of parliament send people congratulatory scrolls, and we send them those certificate holders, which have gotten incredibly expensive post-pandemic and are a big hit to our members' office budgets. If the whips and house leaders are paying attention at the Board of Internal Economy, I think the chair agrees with me, they are very expensive. But it's a big deal. And we recognize the big deal. I've had people respond back to me on the letter and the certificate because they're so proud of having become citizens of another country. So why wouldn't we do it in person? My colleague, Michelle Rempel-Garner, spoke passionately about this issue. There's so few things in Canada that are kind of like a unique Canadian experience. Any Canadian can go to a citizenship ceremony. There are festivals in Calgary where the department in the past, pre-pandemic, has held in open-air, large-scale citizenship ceremonies. One of them, I think, was at Arlington Park. There's another one that happens at the North part of my riding. As some members know, I have the second largest riding by population size in Canada, the largest riding by area size in Calgary as well. So it's a huge area. But there's lots of good places that you could do it open air, and you could have citizens who are born here take the oath with others who are not, and it's group participation. Usually there's a citizenship judge who gives kind of a good speech or explanation of what it means to become a citizen. Maybe they bring up a few famous Canadians who were naturalized citizen. It's something that brings us all together. Again, I've never had a person come into my office and say, going in person is really inconvenient for me. And there are enough resources at this department to do this. And I want to raise the point that the parliamentary budget officer raised and did an analysis of this department's human resources. It has a number of people working for it. And in that office's estimation, it was 65% too many people. I'm really paraphrasing it down to just a one-liner here. But 65% more than needed to currently process the current backlog and workload that they have. Why isn't that we can't make citizenship an equal priority to resettling refugees and to helping immigrants and newcomers? Why isn't it can't be an equal task to make new citizens? We make them through an in-person ceremony. They get to meet others who are becoming citizens of Canada, maybe strike up a friendship with people from a completely different part of the world, maybe with different traditions at home, a different language that they speak at the dinner table. So why can't we make this one of the requirements? This was witness testimony that citizenship ceremonies are important. So we Conservatives have several floor amendments that we want to push to make citizenship ceremonies in law important, because I don't know the next time we'll do a statutory review or a complete review of the Citizenship Act. These come up so rarely, and there are so few opportunities for members to do private members' bill. This bill comes from the Senate. As members know, I've done a disability tax credit, rare disease day. I've done different motions in the House on different issues, but I drew a very low number. I'm, I think, third from last from all members in the House. So I will never get an opportunity in this Parliament to push for a change to the Citizenship Act. But had I been able to, this would have been the issue. It would be these in-person citizenship ceremonies. So I implore members to vote for this. I also want to just quote something that the minister said on this subject during Citizenship Week. He said, it just passed, had over 13,000 people become citizens. And here's the statement I want to quote. It was a great honor to participate in welcoming over 13,500 new members to our Canadian family. In fact, it is one of the best parts of my job. Citizenship Week 2023 has given me the chance to reflect on everything that being Canadian means. The freedom to live as our authentic selves, the connection to our natural world, and the opportunity to reach our full potential no matter where we came from. I'm thankful every day to be Canadian, and I encourage everyone to reflect on what being Canadians means to them. And in the past year, it goes on, past year has seen 364,000 new Canadian citizens. Why can't they have in-person ceremonies? That should always be the default that is pushed. And actually, the government should prepare in anticipation of this. We prepare all the time to have all types of services be provided in person at Service Canada desks, to be provided, passport services. I know that there's an online digital portal for passport services being provided. But I think applying for your passport, although important, especially for new citizens, which, by the way, another process change that the department should do is the document of citizenship. That document should be provided at the end of the citizenship ceremony, not mailed to you afterwards, because you make them cut the PR card, and they can't apply for the passport until they get that certificate. But why can't the department simply plan at certain times of the year? There will be IRCC Service Canada offices open. Maybe you could even work it out with local legions. And you just make it part of the process, make it an equal thing that we do. We do immigration, refugee, citizenship. I don't see why we can't do this. And we put it into law as well. As parliamentarians, we tell the department what to do. I think that's entirely reasonable. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next I have is Mr. Wong. Is there some issue?
It's good now.
That's good now. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the welcome to the committee. Mr. Redekop is usually in this seat. He represents 1/3 of the city of Saskatoon. I also represent 1/3 of the city of Saskatoon, along with Mr. Tucker. So I was shocked to find that they want more virtual than mandatory citizenships. I attend so many before COVID and after COVID. I think when I look around this room, there's a few of you that have been here longer than me. I've only been 2015. And I'll be frank, when I started as a member of Parliament in October of 2015, I didn't attend any Canadian citizenship ceremonies. I was the lucky one. I drew the card. I was born in Canada. I was born in Saskatoon, so I was lucky. But when I look at my community and my province and even my country, it's changing quite a bit, the communities, every one of us. I think when you go back home, you notice our communities have changed more in the last 7-8 years than they have probably in 20 years before that. It's a good change. We've seen that. The staff of immigration, when I attend these ceremonies, are all over me. They are so excited to see a member of Parliament come and give greetings on behalf of this country. All of them. They were so excited in my city to start having real citizenship ceremonies again. And I've done several since COVID. They're phoning my office now saying, when can Mr. Waugh come? In fact, we'll arrange for Mr. Waugh to come for our ceremony to bring greetings. The presiding officials, when I come to Saskatoon, historians that have been in my province and city are the presiding officials. I know many of them have history degrees from the University of Saskatchewan. They talk about our great province, how it was built, and they share that with the new Canadians. And Mr. Tom Kimmich mentioned the RCMP. They are so proud to wear. Many of them are retired and coming back for these citizenship ceremonies. They don't have to, but they feel obliged. And what a ceremony with them on hand. And it goes about an hour. I've been some that are 65, and I've also been at some ceremonies we've had 180. the pictures after with the presiding officials, the MPs, the families. We've cried together on the stage at TCU. These are huge moments in families. Some of them have come from tough situations in other countries. Some have waited years to become a Canadian citizen. Don't take that away from them. This moment to come on the stage and to say, I'm Canadian. The oath is just marvelous. I wished all Canadians after 10 years could experience one. I was a broadcaster in the city for 40 years. I never attended one. Why? I don't know. When I became the MP of Saskatoon Grasswood, I was invited to one. It's one that all Canadians should reaffirm the oath and be proud of this country. I think I agree with my member from Calgary. Sometimes Canadians are too shy to show how great this country is. But when you sit out in the front and look out and see many of them crying with their families because this is the moment they've waited for, don't do this thing virtually. Give them their 3 seconds on the stage. This is ridiculous that I see this amendment coming forward. You know, I've heard many testimonies from people that have come on the stage. 90% of them start out great and start crying at the end. It means so much to them. Many of these new Canadians have gone through hell just to get here. And this is their moment to really have a chance in life. And I'm frustrated when I see, you know, we don't want to really work hard and get people together. No, this is our country. This is when we share our culture. This is when we share our traditions. In my city, we often talk about the Western Development Museum because when I talk to them, I want them to understand Canada. And I deplore every one of them come through the Western Development Museum in Saskatoon and see what our forefathers went through before they got here. Take a look at our province from 1905 to what it is today. I'm going to share your culture. I will share your traditions. But part of coming Canadian is learn what Canada is all about. And part of that, to me, in my city, is the Western Development Museum. See what our forefathers went through in 1905 to today, 2023. And we used to give them free passes for a year to come to our parks. What a great idea that was. Do we still do that? Because that in itself, Canada's wide. I mean, we're the third or second largest country in the world. Many of these people that come here can't believe how vast it is. But giving them a pass to one of our parks was a real treat for many of them. They would take the family and learn about our parks and our country. And we used to put that in our packages. I hope we still do that. I fear we don't anymore. But that was part of a nice little package that they got to feel a part of our country. You know, Madam Chair, our communities, as I said, are changing. And they're changing quite a bit, not only here in Ontario, but in Western Canada. And when I hear the Mayor of Calgary not wanting to celebrate Canada Day, it was frustrating.
Sorry for talking.
No,
You're
no,
being
that's
loud.
fine. Well, as you know, I'm one of the loudest in Parliament. Yeah, but you know, Canada Day in this country, and we had a situation last year in the city of Saskatoon where the Optimist Club for several decades put on Canada Day. And we did a new citizenship ceremony with Canada Day. But the Optimist Club, after many decades, decided they were tired of doing Canada Day. And it's unfortunate because in our city, we're nearing 300,000. We are the largest city in the province, and we welcome citizenship. And the Optimist Club just ran out of steam, and we haven't done a very good job, in my estimation, of Canada Day and what it means. I go to the Ahmadiyas, I go to the Islamic Association. That in itself is a big change in my community, you know? So last year, I had 2 invites for Canada Day. the Islamic Association, and the Ahmadiyas. We didn't have real Canada Day because of the Optimist Club, after many decades, putting on one in Diefenbaker Park. So I know department officials check boxes off and you send it, but I've cried on stages with families. I have seen the impact of real live citizenship ceremonies. I've seen some people that have lived here for years decide at the moment, I need to be a Canadian citizen today, and this is a big moment for me. I've seen some wait 2 or 3 years and have their families together on the stage with us of all colors. And don't take that away from people. I think as parliamentarians, we have an obligation to go to these ceremonies. And I hope all of us have gone to ceremonies. Because if you haven't, you're missing out. And that's shame on you. We need to be at these ceremonies. You need to be in front of new Canadians. It doesn't matter who they vote for. They've come to this country. And every one of us around this table, including the Bloc, should be at citizenship ceremonies. These are new Canadians. These are people that have put trust not only in our country, but our institutions. And that's all I'm going to say, Madam Chair. I'm deeply concerned about this. I'm disappointed in the immigration, knowing that in my province of Saskatchewan, when I show up, we're hugging. The immigration officials are hugging me. Mr. Waugh, thank you for coming. We appreciate you. Or Mr. Redekop or Mr. Tucker, whatever the case is. These are big moments in lives of new Canadians. And don't take that away from them. And Madam Chair, that's all I have to say on this. This is deeply moving, and it should not be done virtual anymore.
You, Ms. MP Ali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The claim my honorable colleagues are making on citizenship ceremonies, it's not true. It's misleading, and I think they should not be playing politics on this, because this is really important. May 23rd last week, when it was a citizenship week, it was very emotional for me. That is the first time after becoming Member of Parliament for Brampton Centre, I had an opportunity to be present at citizenship ceremony in Mississauga office, where 96 people from 36 countries, they took oath, and I witnessed. And that was an emotional moment for me, because after becoming a citizen, I was there the first time in oath ceremony in person. So in Citizenship Week, which was last week, my colleagues from Peel region and across the country attended so many citizenship ceremonies, which were in person. So saying that in-person ceremonies not happening, it's not true, and it's misleading. For me, a citizenship ceremony is really important, and I still remember when I took my own oath as a citizen of Canada. So I would respectfully request my colleagues not to mislead Canadians on this and tell the truth. Last week, we had 105 in-person ceremonies where 13,500 new Canadians took oath, which is amazing. And I believe we have over 275 ceremonies every month which is in person, where 30,000 new Canadians are taking oath. And I think I believe one of my colleagues who's here, she was at citizenship ceremony in Ottawa in person. So just saying that there's no in-person ceremony, it's misleading. It's not factual. I have signed about 1,000 letters in my writing to new Canadians, congratulating them to become a Canadian citizen. So I just wanted to share my experience, and I also like to thank all the citizenship judges and the staff. They put so much effort to prepare for these in-person citizenship ceremonies. And in fact, in Mississauga, there's a citizenship ceremony scheduled for Canada Day, in-person citizenship ceremony scheduled on Canada Day. And it's happening everywhere across the country. So coming out and misleading Canadians, playing a part of politics, and it feels disrespect to those staff who are putting their efforts to prepare these ceremonies. So we should appreciate them. And in fact, I remember that time when Harper's time, conservative side, they wanted to make this citizenship a two-tier citizen, where our Prime Minister came out, Liberal government came out and said Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. So I just wanted to put this on record, Madam Chair, that we have in-person ceremonies all across the country. And in fact, one organization in my riding, they would be partnering with a citizenship judge to have open-air, in-person citizenship ceremony in Brampton Centre. So just wanted to put that fact on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Now we will go to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you very much. I won't take very long, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to thank the officials actually in putting the facts on the table, clarifying that, in fact, citizenship ceremonies is taking place in person as well as virtual as an option. I will only speak very briefly about my own personal experience. As committee members know, I'm an immigrant. My family of 8, immigrated here in Canada back in 1976. And I come from a low-income family. I've shared this on the public record many times because that is my history and background. My mother made $10 a day as an immigrant when we first arrived here as a farm worker. My dad went to language school, the local community college, and took up English as a second language. He's retired now, but he was trained as a tailor. But he couldn't find work here. And so he went to pick up language, and my mother supported a family of 8 on $10 a day. Later on, 2 years later, she graduated and became a minimum wage earner as a dishwasher until she retired at 65. My dad was able to get some work after he picked up the language and worked for a factory, Sears, in fact, and cut out fabric to patterns by piece, and that's how much he got paid. The work was not always steady, and I remember as a child because he would come home with these little stickers, and we have to put them on pieces of paper so that his employer can count how many pieces he cut, and that's how he got paid. I remember the citizenship ceremony, and it was an exciting day for all of us. But I also remember, like it was yesterday, the stresses to which I saw on my mom and dad's faces. Not because they weren't happy to become citizens. It was really important for them and for all of us. They literally threw everything away to support our family to do this. But the stress was this. It meant that they missed their work day. They had no pay otherwise. My mom missed the work day to do the ceremony. Minimum wages meant everything for our family. My dad, whose work was not always steady, and it was on call. And he had to turn away a day that he was called into work to attend the ceremony. Now, I get how exciting it is and how wonderful it is, and lots of people attend, and I love it. I have hosted celebrations with constituents, and I see the excitement and the joy in their faces. I love it. I absolutely love it. But they are people who cannot afford to do it. That is a practicality that exists, not just in my day when I was a kid for my family, but today too, for many immigrants, where the reality of which they face meant a major challenge for them, and it is financial. So having an option to do this, I'm pretty sure had we had that option back in the day, I think my parents would have chosen that. Because for both of them to miss their workday and not be paid was a thing. And there were times, many a times, when there was not enough food on the table, and my mom just kept on saying, I am not hungry. I know she's hungry, but she's not eating because she was doing it for us, the children. So I don't want to have any misconception here about this, and making this mandatory is wrong. I am sorry, it is wrong. It would have been wrong for my family, but we attended because that was the only option. And yes, we celebrated, but I saw the stresses in my parents. I was a kid, but man, do I ever remember that day. Happy and sad at the same time.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Mr. Rempel-Garner is not here. We'll go to Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a privilege for me to be able to speak to this motion as well that my colleague has brought forward to have at an in-person citizenship ceremony. And I just want to add a few words to say that I'm luckier than Mr. Waugh. He was born in Saskatoon. I was born in Souris, Manitoba, some of the greatest farming area in the country. So we'll have that debate later, I'm sure. And thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues, for your best wishes today. But just 20 minutes before I came to this meeting today, I met a person who has been trying to get his wife and 4-year-old daughter over here for most of the last 4 years, who had been running up against a brick wall because of the nature of the country that the person was coming from, perhaps, to get here to Canada. I know I have had interventions with the minister himself. I don't know if any of my colleagues here today from CIMM have had attention to this particular case. But we've talked about how happy the people are at the citizenship ceremonies around this table this morning when they can go in person and have that opportunity. And I'm sympathetic to what Ms. Kwan just said, because maybe not everybody has that ability to do this in person. But I think they should be given that opportunity to do so. And I think that that the situation that I'm talking about this morning, after years of frustration working with this particular individual that I have been working with for a number of years here now, I met him this morning and he said, Larry, guess what? My wife is coming. And I thank the minister for the work that he did to make sure that this particular case was dealt with. You want to talk about smiles. This person, you couldn't wipe the smile off his face this morning with a paintbrush. And so I just want to say that when the opportunity comes for his partner, his wife, who they are married, and his daughter to be here, I'm quite sure that I'll want to make a special attempt to try and be at his citizenship ceremony for his wife, the citizenship ceremony, I should say, for his family. We've all done thousands of Zoom calls during COVID, but this is post-COVID, and we need to have as many of these ceremonies offered as we can. I have had citizenship ceremonies now with at least 3 citizenship judges that have had the opportunity to do these ceremonies over the last 10 years that I've been a member of Parliament almost. They are a special ceremony. We've held them in one of the most historic buildings. My colleague just talked about the Pioneer Center in Saskatoon. I've been there as a child myself, know the importance of that facility as a museum. We've got the Dome building in Brandon. It's one of the oldest historic buildings in southwest Manitoba. It's one of the last standing dome buildings that was built from the Dominion Fairs of the 1880s to the 1920 era, and it is an extremely special place to hold a citizenship ceremony. And I've been on CFB Shiloh, our base at Shiloh for citizenship ceremonies. I've been at the Winnipeg CN station, the old historic station, the first one in Western Canada, to be there when it was used as a citizenship ceremony specifically set up for citizenship ceremonies. And many, many, many were held there. We've got these special ceremonies coming up in our region, Brandon particularly, which is half of the population of Brandon Souris that I have, the other half being completely rural areas and smaller communities, has two major parades a year. One is the Travelers' Day Parade that's coming up on June the 10th, and the other one's the Santa Claus Parade. It was a pretty cold day in end of November this year when that Santa Claus Parade was on. And business people make a special attempt to make sure, and other organizations, to make sure that they've got floats and identification in those two parades. But on one of the coldest days in November last year, I was proud to be able to ride in that parade and watch the smiles on the young families that definitely weren't born here in Canada in this cold weather. And there was thousands and thousands of them lining the streets to take part in that, and many of them I know have their citizenship ceremony because I, like Mr. Ali, have taken the opportunity to be able to do a special event with each one of them in recognition of their citizenship. And I met a person in the airport the other day in Winnipeg going back through, and he thanked me for his citizenship certificate that I'd given him 3 years ago. And and I had never met this individual personally before because, of course, he 3 years ago was in the middle of COVID when he would have got it in a virtual ceremony. I guess it's not our part of this responsibility that we have, and the responsibility we have is not a job. The responsibility we have is to our citizens in Canada. And having been on the Immigration Committee for 3 or 4 years before this particular term of citizenship ceremony as well, or a citizenship committee, it's much more than just the work we do here on a daily basis. It's to make sure that we have as many permanent residents that have the opportunity to become citizens in Canada as we possibly can. I've always one of the terminologies we have here, and many people have heard me say this before publicly. I'm not a big fan of the word temporary foreign workers because what we want is Canadian citizens that are permanent residents that can work in jobs every day, and an opportunity for them to raise their family here along beside all the rest of us that had the opportunity of, as my colleagues have said, the privilege of being born in this country. I guess it's just it has been a privilege for me to be able to see the smiles on these families' faces, and particularly was reminded of it coming to this meeting this morning. It was just a fluke that I ended up stopping at this person's business for a few moments, and I was greeted with this huge story that he had, and I congratulated him profusely for his success in being able to have his family come to Canada. And I know that they will become Canadian citizens at some opportunity, at the earliest opportunity here coming down the road. So I just think that these special ceremonies should be used as much as they possibly can be in Canada. And I know it because of the pride. I'm not going to go into the details that my colleagues have already done in regards to the happiness, the pride they take, the dressing up as a family, the pictures that they take and that they want, and the little Canadian pins, and the little, in my case, the Manitoba pins that the provincial members give them, and the local pins for the communities that they're in. These may not mean much to some folks, but I know the people that they do mean a lot to, and that is those new Canadians that get these small tokens through a live citizenship ceremony. So I'll leave it at that, Madam Chair. I think it's just one of the most wonderful events, as my colleagues have said, that we can attend in Canada as individuals, and I would certainly not want to have the opportunity to do these in a live ceremony at any time in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maguire. Mr. Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, how much time do I have to derail this meeting if I have to speak? I can speak for hours. Can you tell me the hard stop, please?
Mr. Dhaliwal, you make your point, and whatever you want to say, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, first of all, I just want to thank my dear friend Ali, not only bringing all these statistics and attending the meetings last week personally, but all the great work, not only for the people of Brampton Center he does. In fact, any other issue, like on these students issue, he was there. Any other issue that comes in that affects, the immigrant community, he's always been there, and I just want to thank him. Madam Chair, I just want to tell the committee members that I came to Canada as an immigrant as well. I came to Canada in 1984, landed in a beautiful city at that time, Calgary. Went to Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, went to University of Calgary after getting my engineering degree. Madam Chair, I got my citizenship in 1987 at the earliest moment that I could get, and I was very proud, and I'm still very proud to be Canadian. And not only me, in fact, the whole of my family is a Canadian citizen, including my mom, who's a very vibrant. She worked here in this country. She's still today at 83. If she have to go with me campaigning, doing any social work, she's ahead of me, all the time, the energy that she carried. But she came to Canada without speaking any English. And I remember, when Conservatives were in power, when we talk about the citizenship, so they raised the age for the people from 55 to 65, the people that did not have the knowledge of the English language. And I can tell you, if that was the case, my mother would have had to wait a long time if that was, in effect at the time, when she took her citizenship. And I'm sure there were many, but in fact, I still remember, when the Liberals came back in power and brought Bill C-6, which brought that age back to 55, which gave many immigrants, whose mother tongue was not English or French, and gave them the opportunity to have their citizenship earlier. So I tell you how Liberals, are helping. And in fact, I took the oath personally, and I had that small card as well as Mr. Kimmich was, the one that Mr. Kimmich was mentioning. But I have also seen an excitement on an online meeting. I still remember that I was asked to come to one of the homes. Mr. Shashil Kumar, who's a Canadian citizen now, lives in my riding. He invited me. He was very excited to become a Canadian citizen, but have an opportunity to do it online. So what they did is they decorated the whole home, they invited the whole family, and they invited me, and I made my way to them to see the excitement. So with the technology changes, I think it's totally appropriate to have both, personal ceremony as well as people who are in difficult situations like Madam Kwan's mom situation. And I'm sure there are still many out there in Canada that are in the same situation today that cannot go personally to attend this ceremony, and they want to opt out to do it at home and celebrate at home the way Mr. Sushil Kumar and his family did, and invited me, and I was very proud to be part of that celebration at home. Madam Chair, I mean, as I said, I can go for hours, but I know Bill S245 is a very important bill as well, because it is going to help many Canadians who lost their citizenship. And I know Senator Martin. She's a wonderful person. I have a very excellent working relationship with her, and she's also from beautiful British Columbia. And I would love to see this bill go through ASAP. The important question that maybe us should be asking the officials is, because with this online test now, because during the COVID that came in, to protect the identity of that test, I'm sure, it came to my knowledge that there might be an opportunity where there is a fraud going on. The people who themselves don't appear for the test, but the others do from the side. And what steps is the department taking to make sure that we are able to protect the integrity of our examination center or examination test or whatever they have for the citizenship? That will be my question, Madam Chair. And with that, I just want to thank each and everyone who's spoken passionately about the citizenship ceremony, whether it's in person or whether it is online.
Thank you, Mr. Dhaliwal. Do you need an answer from Ms. Gerard or any clarification?
Yes, I do, because this is a major issue, Madam Chair, and I can tell you that one case has come to me personally. That person, who used another source to get his or her test passed and became the citizen, and to protect that type of fraud, what are the other steps that department can take or is it taking to make sure that things like that doesn't happen?
Well, Ms. Gerard.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question with regard to what is currently the online citizenship test, which began to be offered during the pandemic, so that the citizenship application process could continue for the many thousands of citizenship applicants who are in process. I can say that any allegation of fraud is taken seriously and is looked into. So if there is any particular instance or information to be brought to the department's attention, I would ask that any specifics be shared. But in terms of measures to protect the integrity of the test, I'd like to reassure this committee that there are a number of measures in place that include verification of the identity of the person that's taking the test to ensure that that's because it needs to be the applicant who's passing the test to meet the requirement. Measures related to monitoring the test taker during the allotted period, and also some technological aspects which I won't go into, but which assist us to verify the integrity and maintain the integrity of the testing process. Thank you.
Next I have is Mr. Kimmich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate to break it to Mr. Ali, but he's wrong. And I know that he's wrong because he would just lean over to Ms. Lalonde. Ms. Lalonde signed off on an order paper question answer. So these are official documents of the government. It's order paper questions for the staff who may want to go look it up. Question 1258 that was tabled in February of this year, 2023. And it's all of the citizenship ceremonies held in 2022. And when you look at the numbers, in-person ceremonies, it's true, they still have them. I'm pretty sure they're all during Citizenship Week, 157. Virtual only, 3,552. So we're not saying there's no ceremonies. We're saying 3,552 virtual-only ceremonies, which is the option being pushed in emails being sent out to people eligible to be new citizens, should not be happening. That's a big ratio. That is a 95% to 5% ratio almost. They even have hybrid ceremonies, but there's only 33 of them. And this is an official document provided to Parliament, so it has to be true because you can't lie in Parliament. You have to provide actual factual information. And this was signed off in February. It's order paper question 1258. This is one of those, I read everything. I have the data here. And it does show that the department is preferencing virtual ceremonies and pushing them on persons who are eligible to be new citizens of Canada for ceremonies. So I don't think anybody here can review the transcript and the blues. Whether anyone said zero is not the case. And I've heard people have spoken impassionately about their parents' experience and their experiences, and I was always interested to hear. I was hoping that Mr. Dahlia will tell us when he got it. Maybe if he had that citizenship card, he could show it to us. We can trade cards maybe at some point and just look at it. But this is a huge difference between the two. That is a huge disparity. The department is pushing people to do virtual ceremonies. I understand it's cheaper. It's a virtual link. It's a lot easier to manage them. I chaired the Conservative caucus during the pandemic. The reason we all moved on to Zoom is because our caucus moved to Zoom, and we were asking for House of Commons services to allow us, and the cybersecurity people to allow us to use Zoom with a server in Canada. But now it's being pushed everywhere, all across government. The default setting should be in-person ceremonies. And if another member wants to move an amendment, a sub-amendment to this, to offer it in cases where there's compassionate grounds, heck, I think we can be absolutely convinced on compassionate grounds if a person is in a hospital or if a person has, I think Ms. Kwan raised an excellent point, a minimum wage job. My mother worked as a residential cleaner her entire life. Commercial cleaner, residential cleaner, cleaning people's homes. There are people who work hour to hour on wages, and it's hard to take time off. But at the same time, why can't the department do citizenship ceremonies after regular work hours of people? They're salaried employees. Or why can't we hire maybe students through Canada's Summer Jobs Program to do these during the summer? When typically work hours are a bit shorter for many, not all, but many, and we could do them. But these are the official government numbers for 2022. And I didn't even go further. I probably should file an OPQ to ask where were these in-person ceremonies held and when, and were they maybe all done during Citizenship Week? Maybe they were done in certain ridings, but not others. I did not get an invite to a citizenship ceremony that I'm aware of in my riding. But that is a huge discrepancy in the numbers. And that's because I can tell you, I've seen these emails being sent to those who have passed the citizenship test and are eligible. They're being pushed into one direction. So we're pushing back on their behalf. We're pushing back because the default should be in-person ceremonies. And if another member here has a wording for a sub-amendment, like I've said before, I am not burdened with a legal background or a legal education. If there's wording that would be useful here in order to word it correctly in French and in English, that on compassionate grounds we could give persons a chance to do it virtually or maybe in a hybrid format so they could see it done in a format where they're really part of the ceremony, I think that would be okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Strempel-Gardner.
A question for the department officials. How many people elected to take the oath of citizenship online and then did not attend a citizenship ceremony afterwards?
Madam Chair, I don't have those statistics to hand, and I'm not sure if we have a record of persons who didn't appear, but we will take that back, and if statistics are available, we will endeavor to provide them to this committee as soon as feasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strempel-Gardner.
So, to my colleagues, the department officials made an assertion that people could attend a citizenship ceremony if they chose to after taking the oath of citizenship online. Could is not the same as must. And I think what's happened here is that we've seen a bunch of bureaucrats elect to make their lives easier by saying, well, we can process more citizenship applications if we remove the tradition of in-person citizenship ceremonies and put it online. And again, the officials here today said that they've been able to process more citizenship applications because they've taken away the requirement for in-person citizenship ceremonies. To me, I see this as a failure of political leadership and a value judgment made by the government to agree that it is okay to replace an in-person ceremony with an online ceremony in favor of processing more applications. I think had it been one of us, we would have said we need to have both. We need to have in-person ceremonies and the same high rate of citizenship processing. We don't have to sacrifice one to get the other. That's certainly what I would have said.
Right.
I would have refused the department's advice to do that. I would have said this is not acceptable. Find a way to do both. And as Parliament, we do have the ability to direct the government in these matters. And this amendment would allow us to direct the government in these matters, to say within the department, it's not okay. It's not okay that could. We don't accept could. We would like must. Now, I do agree with Ms. Kwan and Mr. Kamek that we should be looking for flexible options for people to attend citizenship ceremonies. But again, this is a failure of political leadership. If there aren't enough in-person ceremonies, either in rural areas, remote communities, to meet the needs of new Canadians and changing labor forces, then it's up to the department to adapt to be able to do that. If we value the shared tradition of an in-person citizenship ceremony, as opposed to, well, this is easier for us as bureaucrats to put this online. It's easier. I don't understand. I find this patently ridiculous. If that was a briefing note that had come into my office as a former cabinet minister, I'll just put it this way. That briefing note would not have come into my office because my department would have known what I would have said, which is no. There are times, and I get it, that there are well-intentioned people who are like, look, there's a process efficiency to be had here. But our job as elected officials and as political ministers is to weigh on balance things beyond process efficiencies and also look at ways at the societal impact of some of our programs. And again, the point that we are arguing here is that could is not the same as must, and that ensuring that people take in-person citizenship ceremonies, based on all of the stories that we're told here, it binds us together as a country, and that's worth fighting for. Mr. Ali's assertion was patently false. The government has removed the requirement to have an in-person ceremony. The numbers that Mr. Kamek just outlined that. The fact that I'm certain that when the department comes back with these figures, there will be a delta between the number of people who elected to click a box and the number of people who elected to click a box and attend an in-person ceremony. The figures that Mr. Kamek read that Ms. Lalonde signed off on in an order paper question already allude to that fact. So let's not kid ourselves here. You know, Mr. Ali said that we were misleading Canadians. He misled Canadians. The facts show that there are not enough citizenship ceremonies for people to attend in person. That is a choice of this government. The choice of the minister was to listen to his department officials who say it's easier for us to get more citizenship applications processed by sacrificing the requirement of an in-person ceremony. And I find that wrong. I find that absolutely wrong. Governor General Clarkson says it's wrong. Former Liberal cabinet ministers say it's wrong. Former mayor of Calgary, who does not share my political stripes, says it's wrong. So when enough people say it's wrong, maybe it's right to change it. I am actually shocked that the minister, happy birthday to him, would be like, yeah, this is okay. I get it. He inherited quite a mess from his predecessors, and he's doing his best. But what we should be discussing here is let's make it a must, and then ensure that the department, so that it's a clear mandate from Parliament and from our committee that this is a must, and then let's talk about how we resource those those various ceremonies, right? So rural and remote communities, as Mr. Kimek said, perhaps flexible hours, different times, looking at ways for different, I mean, like, the Department of Immigration has staffed up massively over the last several years. Like, we're not talking about a shrinking labor force here. There's, like, the Department of Immigration has seen a dramatic, massive increase in public expenditures on full-time equivalent employees, and we've had a dramatic decline in service. That's highly problematic. Like if I was hiring more people and getting less results and then getting proposals on my desk saying we are cutting this service, but we hired a bunch more staff, again, that briefing note wouldn't have come up to my desk because the response would have been known. No, do better. Again, at the heart here, and what I'm trying to implore to colleagues is that as parliamentarians in this committee, we have the capacity and the ability to direct government, and that is what this amendment is about. We are saying, and I think Mr. Ali, Mr. Dhaliwal, other people have talked about the importance of these ceremonies, but they have not acknowledged that the fact that the government has reduced the capacity to attend them. That is fact. And that's why all of these op-eds have been written. That's why there's been public outcry. That's where there has been demands to protest this. So again, just to put into context the comments from the officials, which were so firm, but we've processed more applications. Great. But we've had to sacrifice in-person ceremonies to do that. Not great. Not great at all. And also saying that people could attend. Okay, that's great that they could attend, but they should attend. Those are two different things. And we have sacrificed the principle of coming together in the moment of taking one of the most sacred, precious gifts on this planet, Canadian citizenship, for bureaucratic process efficiencies. And that is ridiculous. If that briefing note had hit my desk, this is a mild version of the rant that would have come to those department officials. I would have been blown away that my time was wasted by such an offensive suggestion. Offensive. Particularly when asking our committee, we just had the supplementary estimates A tabled. They just want more money all the time for less service. I think we should have this lovely carrot cake that our chair has provided for you. I think we should have our carrot cake and eat it too. We should be able to go to the department and say, yes, we would like more citizenship applications processed. Yes, it is absolutely ridiculous, the waiting times that Canadians, new Canadian citizens are waiting to have that citizenship applications processed. And yes, it is absolutely ridiculous that those wait times have increased while we're spending more money on full-time equivalent employees, McKinsey contracts, all of these other things, and that we've had to sacrifice in-person ceremonies. Ridiculous. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Who is managing the performance requirements of this department right now? Unbelievable. So no, I do not accept the context that was given to us by these officials. I would like to know what the delta is between people who have elected online citizenships and have not attended a ceremony, which I know will refute Mr. Ali and Mr. Dhaliwal's assertions. And yes, I stand with Mayor Nenshi. I stand with Mayor Adrian Clarkson. I stand with a former Liberal cabinet minister. I stand with Mansour Lada. I stand with hundreds of other people in this country who say these ceremonies are worth protecting, and it shouldn't be should, it should be must. And that must, yes, it should be qualified with accessibility, regional co-location, meeting the needs of new Canadian citizens who have or who are dealing with affordability crisis and have to work crazy hours and so many side gigs because they can't afford to make rent. Yes, but that doesn't mean that that requirement should be removed. This is a value principle that we should be standing for as parliamentarians. I guess that's the difference between how some people approach cabinet and their leadership position in cabinet and how others do. I guess I don't know if the minister's staff watch this, even though we're not on the same political stripe. Him and I tend to have good conversations from time to time. I would just ask him to really rethink this. And the same thing with the passport thing. What was that? Why would you do that? Why would you spend money on that? Come on, Sean, give your head a shake. And same with this. Waste of time. Unacceptable response from the department. Be a manager, be a leader, and stand up for the values that you have as a political leader. I can't. That response, oh, well, we've processed more citizenship. I can't. So I implore my colleagues to support this motion. It sends clear political mandate that this is something worth fighting for. We can deal with resourcing. We can deal with all of those things afterwards, honestly. But let's not water down one of the very few shared traditions that we have as a country because some bureaucrats told us that they can't do it better. Thank you.
We will now go for a vote on CPC 4. Mr. Clerk, if you can please take the vote on CPC 4.
Mr. Ali.
No.
Mr. Dhaliwal.
No.
Mr. El Khoury.
No.
Mr. Long. No. Madame Lalonde.
No.
Mr. Kimmich.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire.
Definitely.
Mr. Waugh.
Yes.
Ms. Rempel Garner.
Yes.
Madame Larouche.
Contre.
Ms. Kwan.
No.
Yeas 4, nays 7.
CPC 4 is defeated. We will now proceed to new clause 1.4.
No, Madam Chair.
Mr.
Like I mentioned
Kimmich?
before, we have a series of floor amendments that we will be doing on the Citizenship Act. These are floor amendments related to the citizenship ceremonies. So the next one is on, it comes 1.1, Section 24.
So we're done.
And they've been provided to the clerk. And
Mr. Kimmich, have you circulated these to the clerk? So can all your amendments be circulated to the members so that everyone have it and we don't have to suspend the meeting after every?
where some of the amendments we're not going to be carrying through, so it's hard to tell which ones, based on the conversation at table, we'll be moving forward with. I proposed an amendment, as you know, Madam Chair, about a month ago, to reset the deadline for amendments to May 15th, and after a very brief debate, that amendment was voted down on S245. I wanted to avoid this situation, but it's now impossible. So this is a floor amendment, and I have floor amendments to do, and there are members of my committee who want to, and I'm not going to bridge them.
Because if you're, Ms. just 1 second. Ms. LaRoche?
Madam Chairperson, I'm sorry, but I think it's my right to suspend so that we can take a look at the amendments. Just a minute or two, please. I'd like to get the amendments.
Okay. Ms. Lalonde?
Juste pour réflexion.
Well, colleagues, we have what we're asking for is to have all the amendments before the next meetings. Out of courtesy, we all share amendments between ourselves. It's not just a question of today, it's to facilitate future exchanges. Conservative colleagues have amendments and it's their right, but it's a matter of courtesy.
Thank you. Mr. Kimmich?
Madame la Présidente, juste pour rappeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just to remind folks of the facts, I moved an amendment, as I said, over a month ago, I think, for amendments to be brought before the committee by the 15th of May. We debated this briefly, and it was voted down. And then thereafter, well, for the member of the Bloc Québécois, so that she's aware, I think it's important to set the record straight. There was a breach of privilege of a member, and I moved a motion. It was debated. There were witnesses that appeared before the committee. There are amendments that were exchanged with people outside the committee who weren't sitting on the committee. So we have reservations about forwarding on all of our amendments going forward. We just want to ensure that our amendments will not be shared with people who are not direct committee members, and we reserve the right, therefore, to drop table amendments, as each and every member has the opportunity and right to do during debate. We avail ourselves of this right as members of Parliament, and we always make sure that there's a French version that is distributed by the clerk as soon as it's possible to do so. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just note that what's happening, of course, is that for every amendment that the Conservatives moves, we break for about 10 minutes, and we lose 10 minutes in between time. If the Conservative members don't want committee members to have these amendments in advance, certainly they can pass it on to the clerk, and then as these items get debated, that we actually get sent this immediately so that we don't have to pause for 10 minutes every time.
Point of order.
Mr. Comich.
I don't want to remind the member a third time now, but there was a proposal from me to have amendments submitted by May 15th. That member voted it down. We have provided those to both the legislative clerk and the clerk of the committee. They have those, but it's a two-step process because they have to verify whether it is within, well, scope doesn't matter now, but within the principle of the bill. And so we have to be assured that that is the case. So they can't all be distributed because some of them might be outside the principle. And therefore, the chair will have to make a ruling if the chair agrees with the legislative clerk. There is a process to be done here, and certain other rules weren't followed by certain members of this committee. I don't know. And now we hold the right to reserve our amendments until the floor, Madam Chair, and I think it's fair.
As for this meeting, we have resources available until 1:30. Now, if we suspend the meeting, there will be no time to come back. So this, it will be CPC 5, which is being CPC 5. So can you please move CPC 5 so that it can be circulated to all the members, and then we will have to adjourn the meeting because we don't have any services available after 1:30.
So how many minutes do I have, Madam Chair? How fast do I need to speak?
We don't have resources available after 1:30.
Okay. So oh, thank you. I appreciate it from Parliament Secretary. So this is 1.4, Section 24 of the Act is amended. Sorry, so it's new clause 1.4, that Bill S-245 be amended by adding after line 18 on page 1 the following new clause. 1.4, Section 24 of the Act is amended by adding the following. 24, subsection 2, so in parentheses, the Department of Citizenship and Immigration shall arrange for all oath of citizenship ceremonies to be conducted in person, comma, including in rural and remote communities, point. Je peux le lire aussi en français, juste pour que ça soit.
I can also read it in French, so it's in the record that Bill S-245 be amended by adding after line 19, page 1, the new clause 1.4. The Act be amended by adding what follows. Section 24, subparagraph 2, the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration take the necessary steps to ensure that all oath ceremonies occur in person, comma, including in rural and remote communities.
Thank you, Mr. Comich. This will be circulated to all the members, and with that, this meeting comes to an end. We will come back on S245 on Monday. So with that, I really want to thank the officials on behalf of all the members. I really want to thank you that you have been here whenever we have requested you and for as long as we have requested you. So big thanks to you. The meeting is adjourned and we'll meet on Monday.
Thank you, Madam Chair.